welcome you all. We're super excited about this initiative. It's the inaugural year for AscendRural and its Innovation Challenge. Anticipate more to come. My name is Kat Creamy. I'm the VP of Healthcare Innovation for Scale Health. We are privileged to partner with Sourcewell and the Idea Suite on this challenge. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Scale Health, we are a healthcare innovation marketplace where we have relationships, member organizations on one side of the spectrum, where we work very closely with health tech, digital health, and other healthcare innovators. And on the other side, we work with organizations who are interested in moving the needle and creating impact in healthcare, whether that be organizations like Sourcewell or healthcare organizations like providers, payers, medtech, and pharma. And we design and facilitate programs to bring those two sides of the spectrum together. And so we really want to drive impact and innovation in the healthcare space. And we are, as I mentioned, very excited to be working alongside these folks with in launching the AscendRural Innovation Challenge. Just to give everyone a little agenda for what to expect during the session, and some housekeeping rules. So please do stay muted throughout the webinar. There will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. If you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to moderate and address those towards the end. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Bob Seward, who's the VP of Solutions Development and Innovation at Sourcewell. He'll be able to provide additional context around the AscendRural origin story and how we ultimately landed on the topic of youth mental health for this first innovation challenge. He'll also start to paint the picture of Region 5 in North Central Minnesota, to give innovators and the folks on this call a better idea for whom they are building solutions. We can start the slides. We can give you some details specifically around this challenge. So this innovation challenge, as I mentioned, is focused on youth mental health. And the prompt for the challenge is to develop digital platform that promotes long-lasting resilience and emotional health among youth in rural areas. We define youth in this case as ages 14 to 25. And so that's going to be school age, high school and above. And we really are focusing on resilience and emotional health, right? These aren't necessarily interventions later on where they're already in mental health crises, though if that is your focus area, please do consider still applying. But we want to make sure that we are fostering things like coping skills and resilience building so that we can mitigate crises and acute mental health issues down the road. Where we are in the timeline, as I mentioned, we have just launched on September 24th, and we will be accepting applications through October 24th. So please do get started. There are 6 assessments that need to be completed. So give yourself enough time. I recommend that you not wait to the last minute, as it does take some time to have a very intentional and thorough response to the application. Once we have completed the open submission timeframe, we'll be announcing the finalists in December, early December, and then we'll have a final showcase. And my eyes are not seeing this correctly. Sorry. Let me go to full screen. We'll have the final showcase on December 13th. And so we'll be able to answer any questions during the open submission phase. And I believe, thank you, Chris. He just dropped the website to the landing page in the chat. Okay. So as I mentioned, there are 6 assessments that need to be completed as part of the application. There's member verification, business traction, information security, HIPAA, and then there are challenge-specific assessments. The first is the AscendRural Youth Mental Health and Resilience Assessment, and then a general information assessment as well. So if you are a Scale Health member, you likely have already completed parts or all of member verification, business traction, InfoSec, and HIPAA. If you are new to Scale Health, you will need to create a member account and complete those assessments in addition to the challenge-specific assessments. If you have any questions along the way, of course, drop them in the chat, but you can also contact a member of Scale Health at contact@scalehealth.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the assessment specifically. One thing I wanted to call out, we haven't formally announced the judges quite yet, but to give you an idea of who will be reviewing your submissions, we will have members from Sourcewell and AscendRural, in addition to 9 other judges who span across the innovation, healthcare, mental health, and rural community landscape. So we will have some folks who are executive level at health systems, at health plans, in representing the rural community, Region 5 in Minnesota specifically, as well as an investor. So it kind of runs the gamut as to who will be looking at your submission. We'll be looking at everything from, experts in bringing a diverse experience in behavioral health, rural care, community health, and the innovation and startup landscape as well. So I think it always helps to know who's reading your submission so you can kind of speak to the audience. Okay, and with that, I want to hand it over to Bob Seward. As I mentioned, he is the VP of Solution Development and Innovation at Sourcewell, and he'll provide additional information about the initiative.
All right, thanks, Kat. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm super excited about where we're headed with AscendRural and this challenge and the partnership that we've been able to have with Scale Health around this. So a little bit about AscendRural, about who we are. Our focus is we're a technology-driven innovation hub, and we're really dedicated to boosting the well-being of rural America. We're in rural America, central Minnesota, 5 counties are our core that we represent. And we created and launched AscendRural from Sourcewell. Sourcewell is a local unit of government established by the Minnesota State Legislature back in the 70s to serve other government agencies and nonprofits, and including school districts. And so we are all about the rural America, and specifically our little part of that, and really decided that we wanted to launch a program that was focused on bringing together our local leaders and the innovation community to really be able to leverage those 2 groups in creating pilots that would, one, benefit, of course, the people in the 5 counties in central Minnesota, but also help and assist those solutions along the way to being able to make an even broader impact across all rural America. If we take a look at our vision for AscendRural, it's to ensure that everyone, regardless of where they live, has access to top quality care. I think we feel like that this is, in a really broad scope, how we approach things and how we look at the world is that everyone should have that access. And then as we start to drill that down a little bit into our mission is that we exist to massively improve the quality of life in rural regions by co-creating solutions with innovators, healthcare providers, community leaders, and governments. If you think about it, it's really this commitment to say we are not here just to make a little bit of a bump in things. We really are setting ourselves out to say we want to have a huge impact on the quality of life. Well, well-being is, of course, a huge, almost all-inclusive focus. And as we started to think about how do we want to start to boil that down for this first challenge that we wanted to launch, we started to talk about, well, what are some of the things included within well-being? Anywhere from infrastructure and accessibility, we started to drill that down and say, well, there's mental and physical health care. And we really, through a lot of conversations with leaders within our region, landed on mental health being that kind of core of where we wanted to start with this first challenge. So as we are at AscendRural are thinking about challenges, we think about them really in three different focus areas or different ways to kind of approach doing a challenge. The first one being population level focus, which is really what this first challenge for us is in our selection of youth. This is saying that we want to pick a population, a subset of everyone, and how do we want to have a positive impact on their well-being. The second kind is frontline care provider workforce. So think first responders, think people in healthcare professions. How might we be able to impact their capacity to be able to do all the great work that they do day in and day out? And the third area that we're looking at for potential challenges is around underlying structural barriers. So in some cases, there are things like transportation and broadband and others that impact all kinds of innovations that we would be looking to try and accomplish. And so we may end up in the future doing some challenges around things that are more structural in nature because they support across all of the other areas. So why would we approach the world from a challenge standpoint in doing pilots? Well, first off, we certainly wanted to create a focus for the solutions and on the solutions. We know that there are lots of solutions going on out there. Sometimes they have a hard time kind of getting that audience, getting the visibility that they really deserve. And so we believe that doing challenges and pilots is a way to help create some of that focus and visibility. Certainly, we want to be identifying and overcoming rural barriers. In many cases, the underlying challenge is the same as it is in other parts of the country, whether that be urban, suburban, or whatever. But there are specific nuances and barriers that are real within a rural environment. And so we wanted to call that forward and really make sure that we were addressing that. We look to be able to demonstrate the measurable results coming out of these pilots. We want to be a part and come alongside of both the community partners and the technologists that are coming together on these innovations to be able to demonstrate the successes coming out of these pilots such that it can be leveraged as we hope to be able to help people expand these solutions, not just within our region, but across the country. And then, of course, it's collaborating with community leaders. We do all of this for one simple reason. We're here to support those in our community. And so we want to make sure that we are working right alongside all of our community leaders as we look to be able to implement these kinds of challenges and pilots. So our first pilot program, why we landed on youth resilience, Kat touched on this a little bit. Part of this is to say, as we talked with those in our community, and then also more broadly in other rural communities across the country, youth obviously is a point of emphasis. Everyone is very focused on seeing what we can do to impact youth and mental health. Above and beyond that, as Kat touched on, it really is about how do we get in early so that we don't have to deal with crisis later. And so that's why we really picked this youth resilience as our first challenge area. As I mentioned, we had a lot of input from our local community, but we also did a lot of research nationally with rural communities to make sure that this was not just an issue that we needed to resolve within our area, but also across rural communities across the country. We also will be doing, alongside this technology challenge, a similar process, but somewhat different, with our community leaders within the 5 counties. And we will be having an application process for them to be able to raise their hands and say, yes, I want to be a part of this pilot program. We have had a lot of conversations ahead of time. We know there's a ton of interest within the region. We're not concerned about that whatsoever, but we do want to have a very open process for that part of this as well. And then just some quick high-level things from a pilot program standpoint. We expect this pilot to last 3 to 12 months. That being said, what we're really trying to say there is it's pretty open-ended depending on what the actual innovation and technology is. Of course, some things may take longer than others, and so we want to make sure that we're very open to be able to land on a pilot plan that's really going to, again, produce those measurable results we're looking for. We're anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 200 individuals that are actually using whatever the solution ends up being. And overall, the pilot program we will be supporting from Sourcewell with contract to help with the execution and implementation of the pilot within the region. And we've set aside up to $150,000 for Sourcewell to be able to have those contracts with individual companies who are selected and negotiated those contracts. All right, just a little bit of added information about our region, our 5 counties in central Minnesota. So that's Crow Wing, Morrison, Cass, Todd, and Wadena. Those are the 5 counties within Minnesota. You see on the slide, just some real snapshot information about the region. I will say it's just under 4 million acres in these 5 counties. I had somebody the other day told me, I think that's about the size of Connecticut, something like that, which is kind of an interesting way to think about it when you see also there's 170-ish thousand residents. All right, so if you think about that and put that in perspective, we are talking about rural America here. So like I've said, it's 5 counties, but it also includes the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe Reservation within this region as well. It's a pretty diverse region. We just had our inaugural summit for AscendRural. And one of the topics that was shared was if you know one rural community, you know exactly one rural community. And the same is true even within our 5 counties, where you have a lot of diversity. Between, yes, there is some agriculture, but there's also natural resources, some industry as well. And so there's this mix. It's not all, one kind of way of living a rural life. Tourism is also a big part in one of the counties, especially. We have about 65 cities. I'll just hit some of the top points in this slide. I won't read all of it to you, but we'll get all that information to you. But there's about 65 cities. The vast majority, probably at least 60 of them, I would say are under 1,000 residents. So it's a lot of very small. And then there are a few kind of moderately sized towns, I would say. Predominantly English is spoken, but there is indigenous Ojibwe as well as some Spanish that is spoken in the region. We have 23 school districts along with 3 community colleges. We have 3 independent health systems that are active within the 5 counties, as well as 3 larger systems that have a presence within the region. And we are 91% at this point from a demographic standpoint white, compared to the statewide, which is 77.5. So we're a little bit more skewed than the state overall within our region, but that diversity is increasing over time. So that's a really quick run through of who we are at AscendRural, why we're so excited to be partnering with Scale Health around getting this challenge launched and really starting to make an impact on well-being and specifically youth mental health with this first challenge. All right, with that, I get the pleasure of turning this over to Erin Johnston, who is the Innovation Manager for the Ideas Suite, who has been helping us all along with pulling this challenge together. And she's going to moderate a discussion for the next section.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. That background really created a great frame for the conversation that we're about to have. So today we have the privilege of hearing directly from someone making an incredible impact on the population of youth in our pilot region of central Minnesota. So I'm thrilled to welcome Julia Davik. She's a mental health professional from Northern Pines, which is a nonprofit based in Brainerd, Minnesota. We've had the pleasure of meeting Julia quite a few times now. She was a panelist at a recent summit in Minneapolis and provided some really incredible insights. So I'm super grateful that she's here to speak with us again today. And I really think the perspective she's going to be able to provide around the youth that she works with in our pilot region is hugely valuable. Julia, thank you so much for joining us. Could you start by sharing a bit about yourself and the youth and school-based programs that you work on?
Yeah, so my name is Julia Davik, as you said. I am a mom, I am a wife, I have three little boys that all play hockey. We live in Crow Wing County, I work in Cass County, and my husband works in Todd County. So I think I can check three of the counties off of Region 5. And I have been living and working up here for the past 9 years. So my husband grew up in Region 5 and he works in healthcare. He's a physician assistant. And so when he was done with school, he knew he wanted to come back up and serve rural communities. And I kind of got dragged along with him, but I absolutely love it, love raising our families here. And then I work for Northern Pines doing school-based work. So I get to work in a K through 12 building, and I predominantly serve middle school and high schoolers, but then also am the site supervisor for two other school districts in the area. So it's really nice to have this kind of co-located mental health service right already embedded in a lot of these schools.
Amazing. And I'm curious, what are some of the most pressing mental health challenges that you've seen among youth in our rural communities, as well as kind of with that background of being from a city or more urban area, kind of what are the differences that you notice between them?
Yeah, I was just, pulling some data, preparing for this, and my most common diagnoses that I see are anxiety, depression, and trauma. Those are just the more generic ones that hit most kids, and that they need help getting support with. So we all know that anxiety and depression are on the rise for so many different reasons, but I do think that trauma piece in Region 5 is huge. I work with a lot of youth that are in the foster care system, have been removed from homes, because of the lower SES population, there's a lot more potential addiction issues that not necessarily the kids are dealing with, but their parents are dealing with. And so then it's that trickle down effect of how that family stress and how that trauma impacts these kids, all around.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then I'm kind of thinking of how the parent relationships work with mental health and stigma in general. So, from your experience, how does the stigma that surrounds mental health in rural areas really impact young people and their willingness to seek help or their parents to help support them kind of seeking this help?
Yeah, I think it's slowly shifting, but it's hard. And I think in one school district versus another, I see a vast difference of parents' openness and willingness and maybe their resistance. I think a lot of times because we are in the school, it can be kind of pitted as the school versus the parent. And I try to level that out right away that that is not our goal. Like my job is not to, make mandated reports. Yes, I might have to, but we really want to partner with you to get your kid back on track to help support your family when it comes to maybe other social determinants of health. But a lot of times we don't have even the resources or the people to connect them to. And so you as the mental health person are kind of the one-stop shop. And I don't have specialty training and all these different vast array of topics or areas. And so we're trying to just meet the parent best where they're at, and then also reduce the stigma or the fear around your kids just hitting the bumpers of life. Let's get them back on track, like you said, before it becomes a crisis, before there's a need for hospitalization. And I think a lot of times parents are just fearful of being judged. You're not going to approve of my family, my system, the way we do things. You don't understand us. So a lot of times just that joining stage is really important.
Absolutely. And then you spoke a little bit about the role that educators play in identifying and supporting youth mental health. Can you speak a little bit more about that and kind of what that school educator role is.
I mean, I think it's huge. I think we just get the majority of kids coming through public education, especially in rural, in Region 5. I know down in like more urban or metro areas, there's a lot more options when it comes to charter schools and private schools. And we have a few, but not a ton. I would say the majority of youth are in our public school system. I'm trying to I'm drawing a blank a little bit here, but I just think teachers play such a big role, and teachers want to provide social emotional learning, and that's become such a big buzzword. But I do notice that some teachers get really uncomfortable when those conversations maybe get too deep or they don't know what to do next. And just, yeah, not knowing quite how to help. And that's not what they went to school for, and that's not their background. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And kind of have you encountered any barriers while implementing the programs that you work on within schools, and what are those barriers?
One of the things that we started in the school district that I'm at right now is just more integrated mental health education. And I would love to do that in more of our schools. I know it's hit or miss. There's not like a blanket program that we use, but just being able to get our face in front of these kids and provide just general, like you said, mental health education, well-being, encouragement. And that's also increased our referrals because kids are like, oh, you're not a scary therapist. Like you can crack a joke. You can tell me what you did on the weekend. Like we're just building relationships. And I go back to time and time again, the relationships really matter. And so when we can talk to the whole student body, that one kid who might have been afraid to speak out or ask for help or say something, they're still getting as much benefit, even if they're not getting like a specialized mental health service. So when it becomes kind of everybody gets this and we're all going to do better, we're all going to support each other, I think that goes a long way.
Amazing. We've heard a lot about that kind of integrated approach with kind of the community-centric way of addressing mental health needs in the community. So that's amazing context. And with this kind of understanding that mental health resources can be limited in rural areas, have you been seeing any sort of innovative strategies to kind of bridge the resource constraints or resource gap, or is that something that doesn't yet kind of exist within the region?
Yeah, that is something I'm super excited about for this challenge because I don't see a lot of innovation. And a lot of times it's good people. I know it's good people doing good work, but we have this kind of slow moving big ship. And even working at a nonprofit, it takes a lot of time to change policy and, train people up on that. Where I love that Sourcewell and AscendRural can be pretty, aggressive and fast paced. And let's try these things and see if they work before we have to, commit to this for the next, 5 or 10 years. Like let's pilot some of these new ideas. But no, I have not. And I do think the wait lists are super hard because you're constantly trying to triage the kids that need the highest level of care. And you don't want to kick kids off your caseload, but it would be great to better, see the large picture of who might need group therapy or group skills, who might need individual, who might just need to be in a lunch social group, or, all these different things that we're kind of just stabbing at, but we don't really have any structure around.
Amazing. So I'm curious, kind of as new solutions and innovations kind of come up, how have you seen rural youth already engaging with technology within the community and the youth that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that youth are pretty savvy with technology, and my little 8-year-old can figure out how to unlock things on my phone that I don't know how to unlock. But I will say, like, all the kids here at our school districts have access to Chromebooks, so that is great. There's obviously like websites blocked and things that are parental controls on there, but they all have Chromebooks. And I would say a majority of the youth I work with have personal cell phones. I think it's, it can be a very double-edged sword though. They're just taking in this kind of like floodgate of information and floodgate of technology, and they're not able to differentiate what is helpful, what is hurtful, what are boundaries around technology, how is technology impacting my mental health? Because, it's very nuanced as an adult to try to navigate those things, let alone as a youth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know we've been hearing quite a bit about kind of the new policies within schools to make sure students aren't distracted by their devices throughout the day. Can you speak a little bit about that or your experience kind of as those policies have been implemented?
Yeah, we've always had a no phone policy, but this is the first year that they are enforcing the policy. And I do think it's helping the teachers tremendously just keep focus. I think just we've seen this decline in attention span. Maybe that's due to technology, maybe that's due to other things, but I know that pressure is there. They want to be connected, they want to know what's going on. But again, if everybody's doing it, I see that it has been easier. But then you're right, as soon as the bell rings or passing periods or lunchtimes, they are able to use their phone. And I get other kids that are very anxious and they're like, I need to be able to send my mom a text message, or I need to be able to, just zone out for a minute at the lunch table because I'm just so anxious in this situation. Or kids that say, I use music. I have one ear pod in to listen to music, even during a lecture, but I'm focusing and I'm doing my job. Why can't I now listen to a little bit of music quietly? So there's this whole range, and trying to figure that out is hard.
Yeah, I really like the kind of thought behind finding healthy ways to engage with technology when youth are kind of on their devices, and finding unique approaches to doing that is really inspiring. And I'm excited to see kind of the solutions that come out that can help us do that. And then I'm curious if broadband has been a concern in your experiences with youth, either with providing services or what you've heard from kind of their experience at home.
Yeah, during COVID, I mean, that was a learning experience for all of us. And I did, and I still do have quite a few kids on my list that do not have broadband. And so when they are home, they'll say, I can call you, but a lot of these telehealth waivers have gone away. And so a phone call does not sometimes suffice as a billable therapeutic, intervention. And I'm like, they don't have internet. Like they're literally living in a shed, not even a house, not even a camper. Like it's a pre-made shed you get from Menards. Like they don't have running water. And granted, that's not the majority, but that is a real life kid that I know. And so you're right. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we need to have different options. And I don't know what some of those options might be now, of, hotspots or different things. But yeah, broadband is a huge issue in rural America.
Absolutely. And we've heard a lot kind of depending on the areas within the region. And I know that there's parts of Region 5 that have less access to that broadband connection than others do. So it's really good perspective. Thank you. In your experience, what kind of community-based approaches have been successful to create safe, supportive environments for youth dealing with mental health challenges?
I think any kind of community, just multi-generational approaches work really well, right? Where a lot of times we have grandparents, who are foster parents and raising their grandchildren, or aunts and uncles, or, kids might even be couch hopping. So when it's not just, bio mom, bio dad, this nuclear family, but like broadening the horizon of what family looks like and inviting everybody. Because I think a lot of times too, I wish we could do more family involvement. I wish we could do more family services. But when parents, work one or two jobs, there's not a lot of providers that are willing, myself included with a family, to work evening hours. And I think, if kids are learning these new skills and parents can learn these new skills along with them, or at least check in or encourage their youth, I think that would go a really long way. Because I do sometimes see where the youth, thinks like they're so woke now and they can't relate to their parents, but then that causes tension at home. And so I want the adults and the kids to be learning these wellness practices together.
Absolutely. Wherever kind of that integration between youth and their parents, I think is super important. And I know that this is a conversation that you and I have had a few times around measuring the effectiveness of mental health interventions in youth, and how do you see kind of the challenges around measuring effectiveness in your current programs, and then what metrics would you like to be able to measure in resilience practices?
Yeah. There's just so many variables here. And so that's why it's hard, for me to wrap my head around it. I'm such a qualitative type of person, and maybe that's what I went into therapy, but I'm so excited to get more, hopefully, of that qualitative data, or quantitative data of like the numbers and the graphs and like the pretty pictures that you can show people, because we don't have that. We do a lot of exit surveys or like mid-year surveys of just how are you liking your services? How has this helped you? gain more mental health or academic success, but we don't have a lot of those measures. Or even just, you're right, the stressors in your life still might be there, but are you better able to manage them? So obviously that could be tracking truancy, days missed of school, that could be tracking grades, that could be tracking positive health habits, that could be tracking depression scores, like in a PHQ-A, or anxiety scores in a GAD-7. So there are some metrics that we use, and I try to use those as much as possible with kids, but if it becomes like a forced, oh, I have to do that again thing, they're out. They'll just decline it. So I try to use them sporadically where they don't just get annoyed taking data questions.
Amazing. I am also curious kind of how would being able to track some of these things more effectively kind of help with the services that you provide within the region, and kind of where would you like to leverage data most?
Yeah, I think again, it goes back to proving that we're doing good work. I know that we are doing good work, and I know the people on my team are doing good work. And a lot of times when administration in a building leaves, or you get new principals or superintendents in, like everyone's on thin ice because we don't know how supportive they're going to be of mental health services, or different school boards, or just different political things that happen. And so to be able to show effectiveness is great, by, just showing what we're doing. And then also, in nonprofit worlds, we're constantly chasing grant dollars. And so, there's a grant here, so we run this way for a year or two, and then the grant's over here, and then we run this way for a year or two, and everyone gets burnt out. Like, that is sometimes the hardest part of the job, when it should just be focusing on our clients and doing good work, and not having to sometimes chase the grant money.
Absolutely. And then how do you think, I know we've talked a bit about the parent relationship, but thinking kind of holistically, how do you think healthcare providers, parents, community leaders, innovators, technology providers can really work together to better promote long-lasting resilience and emotional health for young people in rural communities? Kind of how do you picture those relationships and collaboration
Yeah.
succeeding?
Yeah. I mean, I think community is huge in rural America. And I think I've learned that coming to a rural community, of just people want to depend on you. People want to know you. Where do you come from? Who are you married to? Where do your kids go to school? People want to just naturally make those connections. And so I think when you do partner with other community agencies that are already there, like, that is going to create buy-in. And then just like that support. When I'm having a bad week, I have supports. When you're having a bad week, I can be your support, just that reciprocity. Because I do think when sometimes professionals are not the go-to person, because it feels maybe out of alignment with values, maybe there's concerns with privacy or dual relationship. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen with that. But also, just like, people want to give back, people want to be a good neighbor, just as much as the rest of us. So if they feel like there's a dual interest of us all getting better, I think that goes a long way. And then just selling everyone on what's in it for me. Like, what is the benefit? What if I take care of my mental health? Okay, then I might have more motivation to go play with my kids. I might, do X, Y, or Z that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Yeah, I think that's huge.
Absolutely. And then my very last question here, looking ahead, what gives you kind of hope about the future of youth mental health in rural communities, and what do you see on the horizon that excites you?
Oh, so much, so much. I think I work with a lot of kids that are truly breaking generational patterns. And that is super exciting to me, where they're thinking about possibilities. They're thinking about, how can I support myself? How can I not fall into the same patterns that my parents did when it comes to addiction or their own mental health or incarcerations? Like, they want to be a generation that doesn't repeat those same patterns. And just, kids are so cool. Like, I am like, one day I'll be too old to work in a school because they won't think I'm cool anymore. But right now I'm going to rock it, because kids they are so progressive, and they are natural innovators, and they want to share their world with you. I think sometimes it is just shutting up and listening and realizing they're humans, and they're not like some foreign creepy thing. They have so much wisdom. And they're already doing a great job. They just might need some encouragement or support, or, some stay on the right track, or let's know what to do when you start to hit the bumpers type of thing.
I love that. I love the kids are so cool It's so true. And I think that it's important, especially for technology innovators and people trying to solve some of these problems, to kind of hone in some of those ideas and looking into kind of what it is that they're interested in. So that was all my questions. Thank you so much for all of your insight, Julia. I will pass it back over to Kat or India. I don't know who, Kat. And we'll, I think, kick off some Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate all of your perspective and working directly with our target population. Oh, well, now it's focused on me. I did do my best to answer a lot of the questions that popped up in the chat during that fireside chat with Julia. But if I think there are a couple that I still hadn't gotten to, and if we have a few more, please do drop it in. We have about 15 minutes to address questions from anyone on this panel. So if you have questions around the application process itself, I can help address those. If you have any questions specifically about AscendRural or Sourcewell, Bob and Aaron can answer those questions. And, you know, Julia was able to provide so much wonderful context around the work that she does. If you have any questions around more of the nuances of working in rural communities, specifically working with youth in rural communities, and it didn't come up in the Q&A and the questions, please drop a couple more questions in the chat so that we can address those. That really is the purpose of this webinar, is we understand that many of you may not have direct experience working in rural communities, may not have a full understanding of the region that we are attempting to drive impact for. And so we really want to be able to provide that context for everyone here. And as a caveat, and this has come up a couple of the questions in the chat, you are not required to be domiciled or located in Minnesota, anywhere in, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, anywhere. I know there's a question specifically around Canada, whether you could apply, but there are no restrictions. And so we do encourage you to apply regardless of where you're located. There were a couple questions asking about licensure. If you are deploying a solution that requires licensing in the state that you are providing those services, let's talk offline about that, because there may be some just regulatory constraints there if you're providing services directly in Minnesota and your provider's not licensed there. So I want to be able to get some more information to be able to answer that question more thoroughly. But if that does apply to you, please do contact us directly at contact@scalehealth.com so that we can respond to you to that specific question. There was another. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Bob. Yeah, this is Bob. I was just going to jump in. I saw one question. I did want to maybe add a little context because I didn't dig in very deeply about the fact that we are going to be running a similar sort of work process around identifying the community partners that will be a part of then the pilots during the challenge. So I saw there was a question on whether or not the individual applying from the technology side needed to pre-identify those. No, you don't have to pre-identify those. Although if you have specific like kinds of organizations you think that you've worked with in the past or that you think would be super beneficial, please highlight those. But no, you don't need to. We will be working with our community leaders along the way. We've got kind of a dual tracks going to identify both from our local community pilot side as well as the technology side here. And then as we start to get towards the end, we merge those two together. And we'll be doing a process to kind of bring the right combinations together as we get deeper into the process.
Great. Yes, thank you. Thank you for addressing that. That was Lucy's question. Looks like you got the information you needed. Fantastic. Thank you, Bob. And then there was another question around, and I guess this is kind of along the same, you touched on it, Bob, but there's a question around recruiting the individuals for the pilot. And so that will really be part of that matchmaking process with the community organization. We've let all of the community organizations that we've talked to so far know that that is the range that we're looking at for the pilot, around 50 to 200. So we're looking at organizations that would be able to engage at minimum 50 individuals, whether it be in one location or if they have a regional presence. But we want to be able to make sure that we have enough of an N of at least 50 for the purposes of the pilot. So as innovators, you will not be responsible for recruiting those participants, but we'll make sure that when we do that matchmaking process with the community-based organization and the finally the most promising solutions on the innovation side, that those numbers make sense, right? And so you'll have an opportunity in one of the assessments to indicate what your pilot would require to demonstrate impact, and to be able to actually measure success or measure metrics or KPIs. So in that section, that's where you would want to say, if there is an ideal type of pilot partner, you can specify it there, though you don't need to be prescriptive. So don't worry about identifying a specific organization. And if there is an ideal number of pilot participants, you can specify it in the assessment as well. And that'll help us, if you are chosen as kind of one of the top solutions, that'll help us do that matchmaking process as well. Great. We could deploy through the pilot. And this is a follow-up question to that. And Bob, I don't know if you want to jump back on and respond to this, but Sunukar is asking if there's a sense of the type of partners that we could deploy through. And so I know we've talked to over a dozen organizations, but if you want to speak to that as well.
Yep, absolutely. So we've talked to, and Erin can jump in too. She's done a lot of the legwork on this. So I appreciate all of her efforts around this. We've been talking with a lot of local nonprofits. And so I did want to also say, in some cases, if you are even thinking that working with multiple different organizations to get to the total, that might be something that we can piece together too. It's a part of what we are looking to be able to help with as AscendRural, is to say, instead of you having to go out and marshal all of your own resources to find the number of organizations that match to be paired with to get to the number of participants you want, that's a piece of the puzzle that we can help with, that we can be having those conversations with our local organizations. We've also talked to different county services directors to make sure that we're including them. We have had a couple of conversations just at a very high level, even thinking about how might this fit within or not within the schools that we talked about. And so there's a lot of different kinds of organizations. Like I said, Sourcewell, we are a local unit of the government who is here to serve our K-12 educators within the 5 counties, other local governments, think cities and townships and counties, and then as well as nonprofits. So we have connections with that broad spectrum of representation across the 5 counties.
Great.
I was just going to jump. There was another question that was about the pilot lasting between 3 and 12 months, which obviously upon success, which we all want to walk into these believing that we're going to have success in these pilots, right? That it would be a longer lasting program. And then the question is, will it need to be self-funded as opposed to reimbursed services rendered? I think that's part of, as we get into the discussions about what the pilot investment is going to require and kind of the contracting around that, we can talk about how that manifests itself, because on both sides of the equation, we believe these are going to be successful, and we don't want to leave our community partners in the lurch saying, hey, we helped along the way with this pilot, and now it's all on you, and likewise on the technology providers. And so as part of that overall kind of how are we landing on what this pilot is going to look like, we certainly would be open to having the conversation about what that looks like post-pilot upon success.
Great. And along those lines, so Patrina, there may be multiple, right? So again, could be one to one, 2 to 1, 1 to 2, right? It's one organization or one winning solution might be piloted in multiple organizations. One community-based organization, maybe a pilot for multiple winning solutions. So again, we want to see kind of what comes through this innovation challenge. We also want to make sure that we are matching them to the appropriate organizations on the other end for the pilot opportunity. Yeah, we're not going to be super what's the word I'm looking for? Prescriptive right now as to what those will look like. We'll definitely it'll be a dialogue with the most promising solutions. We definitely wouldn't want to put a solution and partner with an organization that doesn't make sense if that they're not serving that population. So we're looking at 2 to 3 minimum that we can say. We would love to be able to pilot more than one solution, but that number is not defined. Okay, great. So I think we have a couple minutes left. I think we got through all the. Oh, Ryan, I want to make sure I answer your question here as well. What stage of the company are you looking for? Where are you in the process? Okay, so the stage of company, we understand that you may be still in development phase. We had another question that the organization hadn't completed their HIPAA certification yet, but we're committed to doing so if selected as a solution. We understand that companies are at different stages of maturity. We encourage you to apply regardless, and just let us know what your roadmap is to completing the requirements. So if it's information security and HIPAA that where you're still in the nascent stages, just let us know. We'll take that in consideration. If you're still in a development phase, depending on the pilot organizations that come through on the parallel process, they may be interested in co-development and really being on the ground with an innovative solution to purpose build a solution for their community, especially given the nuances with the rural communities and specifically youth in rural communities. So that shouldn't be a deterrent for anyone who's interested in applying. And I anticipate too that through this pilot, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, we anticipate that there likely will be iterations of the solution based on the pilot partner that is selected, based on the pilot participants. And so, being able to demonstrate that agility will probably be helpful in your submission. And I think we got through all the questions, shockingly. And I know we had a couple pre-questions. Let me just make sure that everyone has access to the same information. Yep, we got through everything. Great. Well, I love starting and ending on time. This is fantastic. So I want to thank Bob again, and Julia and Erin for helping me facilitate this webinar today. Julia, really appreciate all of your background, your expertise, the work that you're doing. It's been just absolutely phenomenal getting to know you, and very excited to have you as part of this challenge. Bob and Aaron and the Idea Suite team and the Sourcewell teams, thank you so much for the work that you guys have done to put this to put AscendRural together and to put this innovation challenge on. We are privileged to partner with you to run this challenge and drive impact in rural communities. If anyone has any further questions, again, please contact us at contact@scalehealth.com. And on one parting note, and just for clarity, because there were some questions about this, if you are logged in as a member and you're having trouble accessing the application, or if you can't find where AscendRural is once you're logged in as a member, just let us know. I'll send a follow-up email to participants so you can see exactly how to log in as a member and then also where to go to access it once you are logged in as a member. But I'll drop it in the chat as well in case you are having the same issues. And grab this before you head out. And yes, thank you, Diane. Wishing everyone a happy World Mental Health Day today. Appreciate all the work that you all are doing in this space. And if there are any questions along the way, feel free to reach out. And with that, I will let everyone go. Now 1 minute late. Okay.